And Russia says the G7 EU oil price cap will not impact its Ukraine offensive as scepticism mounts about the policy's effectiveness.
Well, let's pick up on that story. Russian oil exports have entered uncertain waters with a price cap of no more than $60 per barrel starting today. This measure imposed by the G7, the European Union and Australia aims to cut Moscow's profits from fossil fuel production. That money is being used to fund President Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine. Here's how the price cap works. $60 is the benchmark. Countries that abide by the agreement will ban their insurance and shipping firms from enabling Russian oil shipments if crude is sold above this price cap. If a ship should break the rule, operators will be banned from insuring and financing it for 90 days. For nations outside the G7 and the EU, they cannot use Western maritime services for purchasing Moscow's oil. On top of this mechanism, the EU has also embargoed imports of Russian crude by sea starting today. But there are doubts about whether Russia would really be affected by this price cap. Moscow is selling crude at a discount at around $65 per barrel. That is only $5 above the $60 limit, which means Russia may not lose much in way of profits anyway. In November, Russian crude dropped to $52, and that is lower than the cap even now. Moscow also says it will not abide by the measure even if it has to cut production, insisting it will only work with nations that cooperate under market conditions. Russia is also focused on selling to Asian customers who are less affected by Western sanctions. India, which sourced more than 1/5 of its oil imports from Moscow in October, says it will not be affected by the price cap at all. The country's oil minister says there is no pressure to stop purchases. The price cap allows nations to buy Russian oil, known as euros, at any price, as long as they do not use Western services to make their purchases. And Russia has responded with defiance. The Kremlin says the price cap will only destabilize global energy markets without affecting Moscow's ability to sustain military operations in Ukraine. It adds that Russia is now preparing its response to the move by the G7 and its allies. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak has already called the price cap a gross interference that contradicted the rules of free trade. He and several other Russian officials have also said Moscow will not sell oil to countries that abide by the cap. Meanwhile, Kyiv welcomed the price cap, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had criticized the level as being insufficient to damage the Russian economy. He argues that Moscow has already caused huge losses to all countries of the world by deliberately destabilizing the energy market, and that it's only a matter of time that stronger tools will have to be used. And Sarah Coates joins us live from Kiev. Sarah, what's the feeling in Ukraine about the impact this oil cap will have?
Yes, hello. Well, look, Zelensky used his nighttime address last night to come out to say that this price cap is weak, saying that you wouldn't call this a serious decision to set such a limit for Russian prices, which is quite comfortable for the terrorist state, saying it's only a matter of time before stronger tools will have to be used. Now, he's really not happy with this $60 a barrel price cap there. While, Russia, it remains defiant. We heard Vladimir Putin, he is mulling what to do next, saying that he simply will not sell any oil to anyone who abides by this cap. While his spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, he's come out to say Russia and the Russian economy have required capacity to fully meet the needs and requirements of the special operation, adding that the cap will completely destabilise these global oil markets. Now, we can tell you that as of today, crude is up 1.7%, up to $87 a barrel. And as you mentioned just previously, anyone who actually does go and try to buy this crude above the price cap will have a pretty difficult time, given that most of the infrastructure there, the shipping, the insurance, etc., they are all predominantly European owned. So, if anyone does try to buy oil above that price cap, they will have a pretty tough time in doing so.
Sarah, of course, this price cap, as well as the oil embargo, all attempts to squeeze Russian funding for that war in Ukraine. So what's the latest on the battlefront in Ukraine?
Well, look, I'm sure you can see we are standing in a basement here. This is the makeshift bomb shelter in the hotel where we're staying. Air raid sirens have been ringing out pretty much right across the entire of Ukraine for probably the last 45 minutes or so. There was a large-scale attack expected. You know, from about 3 days ago, they were saying it was imminent, warning people to remain close to shelters. Now, what we can tell you is a number of munitions, they've been fired off from the Azov and the Black Sea, where we know a number of Russian ships are stationed. Right now, here in Kiev, we do know that there have been some explosions sort of in the periphery and in a number of other places right across the country. I'm not sure whether you're seeing these social media pictures. We have people here in Kiev really crammed down into these metro stations with the presidential office coming out to tell people to remain in shelter and to really take this threat seriously. So this is, you know, since we've been here on the ground, probably 4 or 5 days, the most intense situation here in Kiev. But in other parts of the country, let's talk about the east. There in Bakhmut, we're still seeing extremely heavy fighting with people using trenches, tanks and heavy shelling, while places like Kherson down in the south, it continues to be shelled by Russians. So that is the very latest from here. But of course, you know, this situation can change at any time, and we'll of course keep you updated.
Thanks. That's Sarah Court speaking live to us there from a bunker in Kiev.